Welcome everyone to the Aprilia RSV4 1100 factory. Look, this thing is an absolute track day monster. It's been winning titles in 2021 locally. It's got 54 world titles, says so right here on the tank. Massive improvements made in MotoGP. But we're here to find out whether this thing works 9 to 5. Everyday sort of use. So this is an Italian bike. The first thing you have to talk is styling. It looks fantastic, as Italian bikes do, but also looks really quick if it's just standing still. It's got these massive MotoGP style wings. They need those for the MotoGP exploits, and they used to be in World Superbikes, and that's just a way to draw a line between the road bikes and the race bikes. Otherwise, this thing just looks absolutely great. The dash layout, it does look a little complicated when you look at it initially, but it's not that bad. You've got your important things, you've got your speed display, you've got RPMs, gear position, all that great, easily readable. So nice little thing that they've added is a brake and throttle indicator to show you how much of either you're applying. It's got a lean angle sensor, which I don't know you'll be looking at too often if you are actually leaning the bike over. It shows you the engine temperature. It's got a little clock for convenience, which I ended up using quite a bit. The only thing that isn't very convenient is it doesn't have a fuel gauge. So you rely on the reserve light to come on to tell you you've got 30 Ks or else you're pushing it home. So you've got 3 rider modes, of which Sport is the one you'll be using every day. It also happens to be the lowest setting you've got on the RSV4 1100. You've got track as well, which your throttle response sharpens up, your engine braking gets a little bit less. Then you've got full on race mode. Everything gets turned down, all your rider aids, your engine braking is less, but your throttle response is super sharp. So other little displays that you have is the ABS, which is completely configurable. Got traction control you can change, anti-wheelie, which goes from 1 to 3, 3 being the most, 1 being the least. You've got your semi-active suspension, which you can change on the fly, or if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty, you can dive into the menu and do that. It also has launch control, but we were asked not to use it, so we didn't get to try it out. Now, for the really pressing question, can you use this absolutely crazy track day beast to do the daily office commute? The standard seat is hard and it has very little padding, and it has this weird little drop off to the sides which ends up kind of pinching your bum, which feels a bit weird and makes it go numb a little bit, so that wasn't great. It's also pretty tall at about 850 mils. We had our shortest test rider try it out. Now he's 1.68 meters tall and he had to tippy toe the bike around everywhere he went. Reversing it was especially difficult. So for a sports bike, the mirrors are excellent. You can adjust them quite a bit, and for the most part, I found them vibration free. You can see around your shoulders, your elbows, it's not a problem. And I really like that they've got the indicators on the other side of the stalk so the traffic can see you easier. So as far as the clutch is concerned, you only really need it when you set off. From there, I'd recommend using the quick shifter both up and down, works just great. The lever is non-adjustable, it's not too far to reach it, it engages right where you expect it to, feels lovely. That's the good news. The bad news, however, is when you use it in stop-start traffic and you're feathering the clutch constantly, it does start to feel heavy after a while, so that's not so great. The gearbox is phenomenal. The up and down quick shifter works so well. It's so responsive. It always has this positive feel to it. You'll definitely know when you've hooked a gear. The downshifts are just as satisfying. It's got this blip and burp and farty, snorty noises. It's excellent. It never fails to put a smile on your face. It works so great throughout the rev range, but I'd recommend you use it after about 6,000 RPM. On the topic of false neutrals, there just aren't any. It's amazing. We had the bike for about a week. We had 4 different test riders and not one of them hit neutral once. Aprilia's engineers have obviously been hard at work to make sure this problem is completely eliminated. On the track, I absolutely get that. Great job. This comes at a cost, however. While the bike is turned off, you will find neutral first time, every time, no hassles. Once the bike is running, it's next to impossible. This coupled with the heavy clutch, it makes slow moving stop-start situations absolute agony. In the process of filming, I got acquainted with the turning circle of the bike quite a bit. It's quite good for a sports bike, I'm happy to report. It makes parking lot maneuvers less scary. The size of the RSV4 also lends itself quite well to negotiating traffic. So lock to lock, great. The lights, although they are the standard halogen bulbs and no fancy LEDs here, they work really well. The normal low beams have a wider throw, so it makes it easy to see on the sides of the roads everything that's going on. When you use the brights, it's got a narrow beam that throws further, which is actually a little bit more sketch because I'd prefer to see the obstacles coming at me from the side. Normal low beams for normal nighttime riding work fantastically well. The kickstand is tricky to find the first time you look for it. It's somewhere between the peg and the shifter, but the first time your foot finds it, you'll find it again every time. It looks short and stubby, so you'll think it leans the bike over quite a bit, but thankfully it doesn't, so parking it in a garage is not a problem. And if you're ever in doubt, just look at the little lean angle sensor and you'll know how far you tipped over. And as another measure of safety, there's a little light on the dash that shows you the kickstand is down, so there's no excuse to leave it down. In summary, yes, the RSV4 1100 factory can be used as a commuter. Pretty much any bike can. Is it ideal? Probably not. It runs quite hot in stop and go traffic, and it feels like it wants to let loose every once in a while, like it wants the open road or a racetrack, not William Nickel at rush hour. But fear not, this review is just getting started. Now to talk about the 1100cc gorilla in the room. The absolutely massive and insane engine in the RSV4 1100 factory. 217 brake horsepower and 122 Newton meters of torque. Now, those are just numbers until you ride this. The power comes on early and just keeps going and going. And just when you think it's over, you go past 9,000 RPM and you get this gut punch of torque. It's absolutely crazy. Seriously, words fail to describe just how mean this machine feels, especially right there in the mid-range. It's absolutely nuclear. The fueling is perfect, the throttle response is great, everything is immaculate. Good job, Aprilia. So this was my introduction to the wonderful world of V4s, and I'm very glad this was the bike. I wasn't ready for the sonic assault. This factory-fitted titanium acro is probably the best sounding standard exhaust fitted to any bike. But instead of me trying to explain it, you guys just take a listen. The braking capabilities are ridiculous on this bike. The Steelyma calipers on this thing, they just grip and grip and grip, and it feels like it rips your face off. The engine brake is fantastic, provided you have it in sports mode. There's tons of it. In a lot of corners, you can use engine braking alone without even going to the brakes to slow you down. If you do hop on the brakes, they grab like crazy. They work stupendously well in just about every real-world condition, and that's 2 thumbs way up from me. Now, the handling department is where the RSV4 1100 factory really comes into its own. It's so light and flickable, but it doesn't feel twitchy or nervous. It feels very stable and planted. You choose a line, turn in, wherever you want it to go, that's where it'll go. Kind of makes you feel like a better rider than you really are. For day-to-day riding, the active road suspension setting works just fine. It soaks up all the bumps and makes instant adjustments on the move. It is on the stiffer end of the scale though, but not bad at all. At just over 200 kilos wet, this bike feels so much lighter than it should, whether at a standstill or at speed. This is in part due to the low position of the V4 engine, but also the lightweight aluminium frame they used. It feels more like a 600 and not like a big heavy machine. Moving it around a parking lot or a garage is no hassles at all. The tires were the OEM Pirelli Diablo Super Corsa SPs. They always felt super sticky and confidence inspiring once they got up to temperature, and they suit this bike incredibly well. I would, however, be very cautious with these tires on this bike, especially in wet conditions. So what about on longer outrides? How does the 1100 factory deal with the open road? Starting with ergonomics, clip-ons, peg positions, and leg angle are surprisingly comfortable. There's more than enough room to move forward and backwards and really get yourself comfortable. The tank cutouts fit your legs incredibly well regardless of your size, and as a result you're always in full control of the bike. We had riders ranging from 1.6 meters to 1.9 meters and none of them found the bike terribly uncomfortable. Standard screen works great. Sitting more upright, the wind hits you in the chest rather than the helmet, and in a full tuck it's easy to get out of the wind blast. It is worth noting that our tallest rider couldn't tuck in behind the screen, but here is a tip if you are a taller rider and you are looking at the RSV4. Consider buying a more aggressive and aerodynamic race style helmet. This makes you more streamlined and helps keep your head stable at high speed even if it is in clean air. Moving along to switch gear, this is where it all gets a little Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. On the left bar you have all the normal stuff, flash to pass, indicators, hooter, all the things you'd expect where you're expecting to be. Then just to remind you of what you're on, we have a pit limiter button, front and rear trigger to adjust traction control on the move, an anti-wheelie up-down toggle, and you also have the menu navigation joystick. Then like a secret cheat code, press the anti-wheelie toggle once, select your speed and press it again. Boom, now you're in cruise control. On the right you have the kill switch as well as the starter, which doubles up as the mode selector once the bike is running. It's all very clean, very simple to use, and it's got a solid tactile feel. Very nice. Yeah, brilliant features, there are none. There are passenger pegs, but instead of a seat you get these really cool looking little wings, which frankly I'm all for. Alright, so we won't harp on about the lack of a fuel gauge, but while we're on the topic, the tank holds 18.5 litres with 4 litres in reserve. Now we averaged around 15.8 k's to the litre or 6.3 litres per 100 for the metric folk, which means you have a theoretical range of about 260 kilometers. But that's probably going to be less with a bike this fast and it sounds this good. Is this the bike to have if you could only have one? No. This bike is such a special piece of engineering and it demands an occasion every time you ride it. Riding it to the office in Rosebank is not an occasion, that is work. This thing wants faster weekend riding, it wants track day duty. It's kind of unfair to not give it what it wants. In terms of the competition, this is how the Aprilia stacks up. And so, our week with the Aprilia has come to an end, which I'm quite sad about, but nevertheless we shall soldier on. What have we learned after living with the Aprilia for a week? And first of all, it is a bike that you can use in the real world in everyday conditions. It works as a road bike. It has fantastic electronics, which makes even an average rider such as myself feel like a hero rider, regardless of the fact that it starts in sports mode and goes to the moon from there. The other thing that I should touch on is, yes, it is very easy to ride, the electronics help you out a lot, but make no mistake, it is not a beginner bike, so don't get too confident too quickly with that. Yeah, it is not the most comfortable bike to use as a commuter, but if you are going to be using it as your weekend laser guided cruise missile on your breakfast run, yes, it works great. Even better on the track, because after all, that is where it wants to be. It's stylish, it's beautiful, and no matter where we parked it, people couldn't help but ask us, what is this incredible looking thing? I think the takeaway here is if you're struggling to make friends, buy yourself an Aprilia. It goes like hell, it sounds like amplified thunder. If you're even thinking about checking out the RSV4 1100 factory, go check it out, go test ride it. It will leave you with a giant V-shaped smile on your face. A big thanks to the guys over at italianmi Joburg for loaning us their incredible machine. We've added their details in the description below if you want to go check them out. We have some follow-up questions that we'd love to ask them, and if you've got any questions about the bike, shoot them through to us. We'll do a follow-up video where we ask them your burning questions. Speaking of comments, drop yours below to let us know if you do like what you see. We always love hearing from you. Like and subscribe. We've got a lot more stuff coming out in future, and that way you'll stay up to date with all the latest and greatest. I'm Josh from MotoTribe. Thanks for watching.